yelled out, "Run, Tori, run." So Tori started running towards the church, and all the kids started scattering, as a matter of fact. And the guy shot Tori twice in the legs and then walked up point blank while he was on the church steps and shot him once right in the head. And that was the bullet hole I saw, was the one in the head.
Hey, greetings, family. This is Bishop Tony. Thank you for taking time to be a part of another Listen Up episode. Today, we have Pastor Todd and his wife, Cassandra, who experienced one of the most horrific things imaginable. That's the death of a child. And so I'm praying that as they share today, that it will really minister to you. So, my dear friend, good to have you guys here. Thank you for taking time.
Thank you for having us.
So I know a little bit about the story, so I'd like you guys to share, and glad that you're here too, Cassandra, so that, you can tell us how it was for you to support your husband. So Pastor Todd, as a young man, you had a child,
Yes.
And tell us about that, please.
Well, it was one of the times in my life where I was searching. My parents had always raised me in Christ, and so it wasn't anything that they did. It was just me searching and doing what I wanted to do. And there's more to the story with that, but just moving forward, before I was married, I had a child, and I asked the mother to marry me, trying to do the right thing because my parents had instilled that in me. And so she said yes, and then 3 days later, she gave the ring back and said no.
Okay.
And so that was crushing in and of itself because I had told all my friends, I'm getting married, and then it didn't happen.
Okay.
And so, I thank her now, but, then at the time it was very crushing and blowing. And so I didn't meet my wife until a year after that. And then actually it was a little bit longer. It was like a year and a half after that because he was a baby.
That's when you met Cassandra.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so that was a whole ordeal in and of itself. We almost missed each other because of that. But God was doing something. And not to go too deep into the story, but I would see her in church, and and I just never could talk to her. I was always a musician playing, and so the rule was we had to wait till the last person left, so I would run out of the church and and try to catch her, and I couldn't catch her. She was always gone because her family was gone. And so long story short, we just we finally caught up with each other, and we went out, and our first date was her meeting my son. And I wanted to make sure that everything was out in the open, and I didn't want, to start a relationship off with lies or start it off bad.
Okay. All right. And so you guys got married, and Tori, your son, he grew up, obviously. So you want to take us to that day, and tell us where you were and what was going on with you when you guys got the phone call.
We lived in a condo at the time, and she was in the bedroom or somewhere, and I was
downstairs in the kitchen.
You were in the kitchen, okay. And I was upstairs in my office. I've always had a little office to do music or whatever. And my friend Zach had come because at the time I was under consideration for going to the church where he was, and he had kind of hooked up the meeting and everything, and the pastor gave him a VCR, that's how long ago it was, a VCR tape, VHS tape of their church. And it just happened to be that sermon before. So I had never met the pastor. I knew he was tall, but I had never really met him. We had just talked on the phone once or twice. But other than that, I didn't know anything about the church. And in my mind, I pretty much was going to say no. And so Zach came over. We had missed each other for quite a bit, and just hadn't talked. So we didn't even watch the tape together. He just said, you could watch it later. We'll just, we'll talk and catch up. And that's what we did. And as we were talking, that's when the phone call came. I heard the phone ring, but I didn't pay it any mind because, And then when my wife came in the room, I saw her face. I knew something was going on. And I said, honey, what's up? And, that's when she told me that my son was in the hospital and he wasn't, it didn't seem like he was going to make it. And so Zach knew where the hospital was. I had never heard of the hospital before. And so he said, I'll take you. And I said, no, I don't know how long this is going to be because I was still thinking, he might be alive and everything was, it just might be a long ordeal. So I said, I'll follow you and then that way you won't get stuck. And so that's what happened. I followed him. I got there. As soon as I got there, Tori's mother said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, look, I don't have time for all that. Just what's going on? And she says, "You need to identify the body." So that was my immediate conversation was, "You need to identify the body." And I was like, "What?" So I was shaken because I thought, he was hooked up and he was still alive. And so they escorted us into the room, and I went in and I saw that my son was wearing a bandana around his head, and he doesn't wear bandanas, so I knew something was going on. So I went.
And he was 15 at the time?
He was 15, and yeah. Long story short, I pulled the bandana up, and there was a hole in his head right here, and I yelled out to God. I'm not very proud of it now. I realize now that God can handle our anger. God can handle us being real with him. David was very good at that. But at the time, I was just angry. I mean, it was just complete anger. You want me to go to this church with people I don't know and do all of this and change my whole entire life, and you can't take care of my son. So that was huge. For me, the nurses backed up. Her family just totally backed out of the room because I wasn't saying pleasant things at all. And but again, God could handle that, and he walked with me through it.
Okay.
And so
that phone call, Cassandra, so you were in the kitchen at that time, and from what I understand, that was a contemplation about Pastor Todd, and he was just Todd at the time, right?
Yeah.
Transitioning from being worship leader, musician at one church into another, and so Zach came by just to kind of welcome you, or really kind of recruit you, and he bought the tape of the other church's service so that you can observe it, and he wanted to share that with you. So there's your husband, this opportunity is in there with his friend, and you're just in the kitchen, and you get this phone call. Tell me about that, if you don't mind.
So I got the phone call, like I said, in the kitchen. I believe our other son was upstairs in his room, and I got the call, and like he said, it was very startling. It's not the call that I expected to get.
Yes.
To tell me that he needs to get to the hospital right away if he wants to see him before, because it doesn't look like he's going to make it.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
I had to hang up the phone, take a couple of deep breaths, and go upstairs and share that with the two of them, him and Zach.
Okay, so what was that feeling like that you had walking up those stairs,
A lot
knowing
of
you had to
emotions.
deliver?
Yeah, a lot of emotions.
Okay.
A lot of emotions, yeah.
Now, by then, you guys had Devontae.
Uh-huh.
And how old was he at the time?
9 or
10.
10?
He was
10.
10 years old. Okay.
Yeah. Didn't mention anything to him.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so he left with Zach, and I just stayed at the house with Devontae.
So, as a wife and as a mom, so Pastor Todd is with Zach, they take off, and so you're still at home.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking, and what's going through your mind as you especially with Devontae still being there?
Yeah, just trying to create normalcy.
Okay.
So, we had the TV on, and I believe I was trying to cook some dinner for Devontae and him, but ended up being just me and Devontae.
Yeah.
But just trying to not let him see that I was concerned about something.
Okay. Okay.
All
right. Okay. So, Pastor Todd, you get there, and you see the bullet hole, and of course, like anybody, you're upset, you're angry, you're a father, and you're hurt, and you let God know it. What happened? Tell me about that.
Well, again, I was cursing and all kinds of stuff there. And I had to go home. And, we didn't find out what really happened to the story till later, but we can talk about that a little later. But I got home, and it was later at night. I don't know, it was after 2 or something. It was late. And then I said, we're going to just go to sleep. Let's go to sleep. And we woke up. I couldn't really sleep well.
Right.
And so we woke up, and we were trying to decide whether or not we should tell Devontae, because it was a Thursday night. Should we tell Devontae or not? Because we didn't want him to find out from school. So I said, no, we should just tell him.
So did you keep him home that Friday morning?
Yeah, that was one of the things we were contemplating. Should we just
send him to school
or keep him
or
home? But we didn't want him to find out at school, so we decided to keep him home, and then trying to decide how to tell him.
Okay.
So we told him, and he went under the covers and was shaking a little bit, and she wanted to reach out to him, and something inside of me just did exactly like this, just blocked her. I know it's the Holy Spirit now, but then I didn't. I just was, and it wasn't a macho thing. It was just to let him grieve. You know, we all have to grieve in our. That's kind of what was running through my head.
Yeah.
You know, we have to let him grieve in our own way. And so he did that for about no, it wasn't even that long. And he said, "Can I go to the restroom?" And he excused himself to, the restroom. And so he went into the restroom, and it couldn't have been 5-10 minutes. He came back out.
But it felt like forever.
It felt like forever, but it couldn't have been 5 minutes. And he came back out, and he was totally changed. His face, his countenance, everything about him had changed.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and I'll never forget this. I make jokes if you can ever make jokes, but he did say, "Father, why are we weeping? We should be rejoicing because Tori's in heaven." And it killed me because I was still mad at God, in the morning, and I had been up all night, and I was angry, and I couldn't let go of my anger, and he did it in 5 minutes.
Wow.
And, and he's 10, and he was just kind of leading the way for me, and then that's when I began to hear God's voice. And God, the way I hear God is maybe different than other people. I don't audibly hear him, but I feel him inside of me speaking, and it gets stronger and stronger. And that's how I know it's him, because if it's not, it's just a thought, but it just was vibrating inside of me. And I could hear him say, "Watch the tape." And it got stronger and stronger. And after a while I said, "Honey, I think we're supposed to watch the tape."
And that was a tape from Zach that Zach had brought over.
Yeah.
Of the other church.
Of the other church.
Okay.
And I didn't want to. And, during that time I was arguing with God. I don't want to watch it. I don't, and it just got stronger. Why am I going to watch this? How's that going to help me? I don't want to watch it right now. I'm angry. But God was just so patient. And so we put the tape in, and the church started, and, the worship was all right. I can help him. I can help him. And I said, "But God, I really don't want," and he just watched the tape. It just kept getting stronger. And so then the pastor came up, but it was a short guy. And I thought he was tall. But his name was, And so same name as the other pastor.
Yeah.
But so I still thought maybe that was the pastor. And then I realized it wasn't. And he started talking about how his son had been killed and how he got through it with worship and praise. And as soon as he said that, I knew that was God talking to me. And that was the message that I needed to hear. I just shut off the tape. Now, I don't remember what we sang. Maybe you remember. Do you remember what we sang? We just started worshiping God. And now the interesting thing was that the situation didn't change, but my perspective did. And, because we all sang together, my son was in there singing loud. And,
okay. So all three of you.
Yeah, all three of us.
The morning after.
Yeah, the
are
morning.
worshiping God.
Are worshiping God. Just singing songs we knew.
Okay.
We just don't remember what they were because
Yeah.
it wasn't important. The important thing was that God was changing my outlook and my perspective.
Okay.
And I allowed him to.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Tori,
Yeah.
on that previous day, he was at his mom's church.
Correct.
From what I understand, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so tell me what actually transpired. Tell us what transpired.
Well, of course, we get this, via third party because it was
Yes.
just the other kids that were with him. They were waiting for choir rehearsal to start, and he had been dropped off. The church was in San Bernardino, and, he lived out in Riverside. So he had been dropped off out there early, and so he and the other kids were hanging, waiting for the choir director to get there or someone from the church staff. I don't. And while they're waiting and talking, two girls drove up in a Jeep. Now, my son, he was wearing his Ohio State gear because that's where he wanted to go to school.
And that's red. Those colors are red.
Those
right.
colors are red.
Mhm.
And he didn't realize that was a blue neighborhood. And, no one did, actually. And so he was just wanting to go to Ohio State. My parents lived pretty close to the school at the time. Now they've moved back out here, but they lived pretty close to the school. And so that's why he was wearing the stuff. And the girls questioned him about it, according to his friend. His friend had walked out there with him the first time. And they just said, just be careful out there. And, apparently the girls were cute because they came back about 15 minutes later. And I always believe you get a nudge from the Holy Spirit when there's problems. You might get a direct tap from somebody. You might get a word, or maybe even God will use a donkey, like in the word, to talk to you, whatever. And his friend grabbed him just like this and said, hey,
This is when the girls had returned?
when the girls had returned, do you
Okay.
think you should go back down? They question you about your colors. He's young. He's 15. I'm gonna go get these digits. So he went back
You say
down.
get the digits? That's get the phone
The
numbers?
phone numbers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna get these digits. You're 15, and he's a handsome young man. So he went down there, and no one knows what was said. His friend was talking to, I guess, some more kids had come, so he was talking to the other kids, and then a guy jumped out from the back of the Jeep, and no one knows what was said. My son was bowing to him and just apologizing or whatever it looked like from the posture and the body stuff. And then he started walking back. Well, then my friend saw the guy pull out a gun and, yelled out, "Run, Tori, run." So Tori started running towards the church, and all the kids started scattering, as a matter of fact. And the guy shot Tori twice in the legs and then walked up point blank while he was on the church steps and shot him once right in the head. And that was the bullet hole I saw, was the one in the head.
Wow. Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So sorry that you guys had to experience that. And so now tell me, so once you got the gist of the story, how did that impact the rest of your family?
Well, of course, my son, that was his best friend.
Yeah.
He looked up to Tori a lot. And he talks about it now more than he did then, but he didn't have, his older brother to help him out with girls and help him out with problems and homework and situations. And so I think it affected him probably the worst, but also my sister,
Yeah.
who didn't have, her cousin to hang with and, and all of that stuff and to show the ropes to. And, she's 16 years younger than me, so she was younger too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, there's a whole family dynamic. My parents have always been strong in the faith, but they, everyone's concerned about me, including my wife.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the beauty of it, is that my wife didn't try to manhandle me or anything like that, or try to tell me how I should feel.
Okay.
She let me feel how I was feeling and didn't try to manage me, but she would come in when she saw I needed help, and she would back away when she saw I didn't. And just kind of let me, go through it and process it. But the biggest thing that she would always do, and this actually saved our marriage earlier, but she would pray. My wife is a wonderful prayer warrior. And because of that, God would show her how to work with me or how not to work with me. And she gave
Okay.
me space to grow. You could probably
Yeah. In fact, I want to
Yeah.
ask you that, Cassandra. Tell me about that.
Well, like he said early on, I learned to start praying and interceding for my husband instead of yik-yakking. And it really, God knew how to prepare me ahead of time for this time, for that time. And so, I would really pray and intercede for him. And like he said, to be honest, it's true. God would show me when to go and check on him, what to say to him. Not necessarily exact words, but, what to say to him and how to deal with it, because everybody grieves in their own way. There's nothing I can say that's going to help necessarily, but just being there. And so, the Lord really helped me with just helping him, but prayer. It was just a lot of
Okay.
prayer,
Okay.
as well as, with our son too, to help him with their
Right.
son also.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Bible's really good about talking about that, blessed be the God of comfort, who comforts us through our trials and tribulations, so that we can comfort others with their own trial. It's not the same trial or tribulation that you had, but it's because you've experienced pain, because you've experienced, whatever has happened to you. You know what pain feels like.
Yeah.
And so you can stand in the gap, not just with prayer, but just being there and just be that comfort for that person. I know a lot of people say, "I don't know what to say." You don't have to do anything, but pray.
Okay.
You don't have to say anything. If you're there, that means a whole lot more than throwing a whole bunch of money at it or doing whatever. It just being there, taking
Just
the
being
time.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, how do you handle his birthday when it comes around, or Christmas? How was that for you guys?
Now it's been, Tori would be, let's see, 27, 25. He would be 32 right now. So now it's there's been a lot of time going by, but I still feel it, and I don't realize I'm doing it, but she can see me crashing.
What's hard is his birthday and the anniversary of the death, more
Okay.
so than Christmas.
Okay.
Usually just before those times, I'm really checking in on him and Devontae and just really praying about, I know they know and they remember. So those are usually the harder times. And usually, like I said, the anniversary of the death is the hardest time
Right.
for Todd.
The birthday.
Yeah. So
Well, that's something too, and I was thinking about how you two are managing it, and I wasn't conscious that how your other son, Devontae, is handling that. So you as a mom, you're doing a wife duty and a mother duty to really help your family get through that time.
correct.
So you said you just pay attention to how they're behaving. You're
Mm-hmm.
watching. You're just looking in, and then you're interceding for them. And then the other thing I heard you say too is that you hear God, and He's giving you direction.
Yeah.
Yes, amen. That is so powerful. What would you say to other wives? And we pray that no one ever has that tragedy happen to them.
Amen.
But we know that trauma occurs. Things happen. So what advice would you give, Cassandra, to any other mother or wife that's trying to help their family through something difficult?
To really be in tune with the Lord. That's, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things I learned from our marriage was I really needed to get before God. And that helped me so much to spending time with him, just worshiping him, praying with him, but being in tune and listening. He would show me things that I actually didn't even notice before about Todd.
Okay.
After that happened, and he would show me the change in Todd just before Tori's birthday or just before the anniversary.
Wow.
So the Lord would start showing me things that, okay, you need to do this. You should
Yeah.
go talk to him. Just go give him a hug or whatever.
Okay.
Just check in on him. Make sure he's not just sitting idle, dwelling on negative thoughts or whatever. Same thing with Devontae. I check in on him in a little bit different way, which is interesting because the Lord, of course, will show you how to deal with one different than the other. But a lot of times, I don't think they knew what I was doing, and maybe they did. I don't know. Later,
I
yeah.
did.
But at the beginning, I
At
don't
the
think they
beginning.
really knew. But I would just tell all women to just really pray, but get in tune and really start hearing from God and knowing that you're hearing from God, and it's not just you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of times we want to hug and cry and love them and do. Sometimes that's not what they need.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes you need to just be quiet and
Yeah.
hear what the Lord has to say and just act upon it.
Scripture does say that the Spirit will guide us and it will show us things to come and guide us into the truth. So I'm hearing you say you were just Spirit-led, in ministering to your husband and to your son. Yes. You about to say something?
I was just gonna say it goes for us husbands as well. We need to be the leaders of our house, but if we're not yet, we need to watch what God is doing through our wives and listen, and even when we are, because one thing I learned from another pastor, very famous pastor, but he said, me and my wife, we don't pray together all the time. And I used to think I was a bad husband, but he said, no. God talks to her differently than he talks to me. And because we have separate prayer times, of course we come together for
Yeah.
important things, but because we have separate prayer times, then we come together afterwards and we talk about it. But we don't necessarily have to pray for everything on every, and it freed me up when I heard that, because it's true. And our wives can give us insight, but we should also be the leaders. And my wife would get up, oh my God, 4 a.m, and pray. That's not me. That's not who I am. But that's her. And she would get up and literally go in the closet. When we were in the she would go in the closet, shut the door, to try not to wake me up. And I think I was mad at you at the time when we were doing that. And I would act like I was asleep. I was laying down. But I really wasn't asleep. I was noticing. And, the guilt came on me like, that should be you. You should be the one leading your house, not your wife. And a lot of us men, we need to get it together. And we
Okay.
need to realize where we fall short. And we're supposed to be the head of our wives, and we're supposed to love our wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. And that might mean giving up some friends. That might be giving up some activities. Maybe not doing everything that you used to do, and growing in that and realizing that she's your best friend and
Yeah.
you're on the same team. That's what we talk about when we counsel couples all the time. You guys are on the same team. We're
Same
Team
team.
Lynch.
All right.
Whatever your team is, we're on the same team.
That's
And yeah,
beautiful.
you pick each other up like she did me when my son died, and like I did, when her mom passed, and we pick each other up. We're on the same team.
And so, of course, now you're doing much better.
Oh, sure.
And so, what happened with that church when you watched the videotape and the other guest pastor had, suffered a tragedy with the loss of his child, and so God just supernaturally knew how that you were going to need to be ministered to.
Yeah.
And so, how did you grow? How did you get better? What were some of the things you did? I appreciate what you shared about the marriage, but more individually, what were some of the things you did to help you heal?
Well, I began to hear and listen to God even more. And he would share with me, because there was it was a fork in the road for me.
Yeah.
It was either I serve God 100% or I walk away from God, because I was still angry. And so I cried out to him, in the same manner that I cried out at the hospital. But now I had some insight and some wisdom. And so I cried out to him. And I said, God, I need for you to show up like in the old days with Moses, and just burn up some bushes, do something. Just
Okay.
show up. And because I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't walk with you. And so long story short, he did.
Mm.
He would tell me that that this would happen, and I would tell her and one of my best friends at the time, and I would tell him. And then it would come to pass. And so I would have these witnesses, and that's why I was kind of doing it, because I didn't want to think I was going crazy either. And God just walked me through step by step, and I ended up going to the church and becoming a pastor. Without my son's death, I wouldn't be a pastor.
Wow.
And that's,
And speaking to that one pastor that you saw in the video, which really helped.
yeah, I did. I was able to meet the guy that was talking and talk to him and just share with him, and he shared with me.
Mm.
And just getting people around you that, and that's important too, getting people around you that are or that have been where you need to go.
Okay.
And learning from them, not being afraid to realize that you have to make changes and actually making those changes.
Wow.
In your life.
So you had this fork in the road. And so I'm going to go all the way with God, or I'm just going to go my own way. But you chose to go all the way with God.
All the way with God.
Okay. And so practically you surrounded yourself with friends. You increased your prayer life. And
I went full-time ministry.
Okay.
And stopped working with the Postal Service, where
Okay.
now I'm back with the Postal Service. But that was a big 13-year circle
Okay.
for me and growth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so impressive. I really appreciate you guys. That's such a powerful testimony. And for you guys that don't know, I've had a chance to really get to know Pastor Todd. We actually met in seminary, and we were in class together. And you guys that don't know, Pastor Todd is really, really, he's a geek. He's a techie guy, and he had this fancy Bible software. And all the other guys in the class, we used to tease him and give him a hard time. But when we needed an answer, he was the one that had it, right there on his laptop. And so we would laugh and talk. And then subsequently, years later, he came down, and now he's the worship pastor here at New Day. And Cassandra, my wife, thinks the world of you, and you guys have become buddies. And I just want to applaud you, and because you guys are steadfast and unmovable. And many people don't do what you've done, and they go through things, but you guys are so strong. And now you're ministering to other families, and you're still talking about plans for the future and doing more for the Lord. And I'm blessed to know you, blessed to work with you, blessed to call you brother and sister, and just excited about you guys. So family, I pray that this has been a blessing for you. And if any time at all, Pastor Todd, he's the type that he loves, he cares, he wants to help. I mean, his heart is as big as this building that we're in. And so if you need to, just reach out to him. But in the meantime, please notice something that Sister Cassandra said. She got to know the Lord before the tragedy happened. She knew the voice of the Spirit, and she allowed the Spirit to direct her. And she's a woman, she's emotional, she cares and all that kind of stuff, and she's very nurturing, but she listens to the Spirit. And Pastor Todd said once the tragedy happened, he surrounded himself with other people, godly men, people who could really inspire him and encourage him. And I pray that that's your testimony too, that you would do the same. So God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon now.